Welcome to this Danbury Fire Department training brief where we will review the volunteer tankers and their capabilities and limitations. There are 5 tankers in the Danbury Volunteer Fire Department. Representing Battalion 31 are tankers 31-1 and 31-2. Tanker 31-1 is a tanker formerly known as Tanker 10 from Germantown. Tanker 31-2 is the tanker formerly known as Tanker 11 out of Beaver Brook Fire Station. Both tankers respond from Germantown Firehouse now and are usually on a monthly rotating basis for which will respond out first. Tanker 12 responds from Mill Plain Firehouse, Tanker 13 responds from Myrie Brook Firehouse, and Tanker 14 resides at the King Street Fire Station. All tankers have portable ponds equal to or greater than their tanker size, except for Tanker 14, which does not have a portable pond. Tanker 31-1, formerly Tanker 10, has a 2,500 gallon onboard tank with a 3,000 gallon portable pond. It supports a 1,250 GPM pump. The apparatus has two 10-foot sections of 6-inch hard suction. There are 2 cross lays with 200 feet of 1 3/4 hose and 150 feet of 1 3/4 front trash line. The driver's side pump panel is equipped with 2 2.5-inch discharges, a 2.5-inch intake, and a 5-inch intake with a gate valve. On the officer's side of the apparatus, the panel has a 3-inch discharge with a 5-inch Stortz adapter on it. There's a 2.5-inch discharge, a 2.5-inch intake, and a 5-inch discharge with a gate valve. Tanker 31-1 is one of 4 tankers in the city with dump chutes on each side of the apparatus. On this apparatus, the dump chutes have pneumatic in-cab and rear actuator switches. There are 2 direct fill locations on the back of this apparatus. On the driver's side rear is a 3-inch direct fill with a 5-inch Stortz adapter. The officer's side has a 3-inch direct fill to the tank. These are not discharges. There is a rear dump chute as well. The dump chutes can be controlled from the cab or via the switches identified by the yellow arrows in the illustration. Battalion 31 claims there's 1,500 feet of 5-inch and 700 feet of 3-inch supply hose on the top hose bed of this apparatus. Tanker 31-2, formerly Beaver Brook's Tanker 11, has a 2,500 gallon tank capacity with a 3,000 gallon portable pond. There are 2 cross lays with 200 feet of 1 3/4 hose. However, this apparatus only has a 500 GPM pump. There are 2 10-foot sections of 6-inch hard suction. On the pump panel of 31-2, there's a 2.5-inch discharge, a 2.5-inch intake, and a 5-inch driver's side intake that is capped. There is no valve for this intake. Similar to the driver's side, there's another 5-inch intake that is capped with no gating device. There is a 3-inch discharge with a gated Y with 2 2.5-inch discharges. This apparatus also has extendable chutes on both sides. These chutes are opened with red wheel valves on the back of the apparatus, which will be illustrated in the next slide. The red gate valves can be seen just above the bumper. Each valve controls its respective side. There is also a rear chute controlled by a manual dump valve on the top of the chute. The red lever needs to be removed first, and then the long lever can open the dump chute. There are two direct tank fills on the back of this apparatus. A 2.5 intake with a manual ball valve and a 5-inch passenger side intake with a manual gate valve. Tanker 12 of Mill Plain has a 2,500 gallon tank capacity that supports a 1,250 GPM pump. The apparatus also has 3,000 gallon portable pond and 3 10-foot sections of 5-inch hard suction. The front crosslay has 150 feet of 1 3/4 hose, and the rear crosslay has 200 feet of 1 3/4 hose. This apparatus was a state champion tanker 3 years running from 1993 to 95. Tanker 12 boasts a busy pump panel on the driver's side with 5-inch discharge reduced to a 2.5. There's a dedicated 2.5-inch discharge, a 2.5-inch intake, and a 5-inch intake with a gate valve. The passenger side is less busy with a 2.5-inch discharge, a 5-inch discharge, and a 5-inch intake that is capped with no gating device. There is a lowering device for the portable pond. Use this similar to the lowering device for the ground ladders on the 16 Pierce Velocities to lower the pond to make it accessible. Using the lowering switch makes a 3,000 gallon pond much more accessible. Tanker 12 has both discharges and tank fills on the back of the apparatus. The tank fills can be identified as the 5-inch Storch connections with ball valves. There is also a 2.5 rear discharge pre-connected with 150 feet of 2.5-inch hose. There is a 5-inch discharge as well on the officer's side of the rear of the apparatus. There is a 10-inch extendable chute with pneumatic actuator controls from the cab and the rear of the apparatus. Mill Plain also claims there is 1,000 feet of 5-inch and 600 feet of 3-inch supply hose on the rear hose beds. Tanker 12 is a third tanker with side chutes on both sides. They are opened with in-cab and rear pneumatic actuators. The rear actuators can be found just below the warning lights on the rear of the apparatus. Tanker 13 from Myrie Brook Fire Station has a 3,000 gallon tank capacity with a 3,000 gallon portable pond, but only has a 500 GPM pump. There are two 10-foot sections of 6-inch hard suction on this apparatus. The pump panel on Tanker 13 is very simple. There is a 2.5-inch discharge and a 2.5-inch intake. There is also a capped 4-inch intake that has the ability to connect with hard suction. There is no gate valve attached to this intake. The 4-inch passenger side intake is similarly designed. It can be used for 6-inch hard suction or an intake valve with a 5-inch Storch connection. There is no gate valve currently attached to this adapter as it is capped. There is also a 2.5-inch discharge on this side of the apparatus. There are two tank fills on the rear of this apparatus, a 5-inch Storch connection to the right of the dump chute and a 2.5-inch located on the left side of the dump chute. These are both controlled by a gate valve. Lastly, Tanker 14 resides at King Street Fire Station and is equipped with a 1,000 GPM pump supported by an 1,800 gallon tank on a single axle. There is no drop tank on this apparatus. It is equipped with two 10-foot sections of 5-inch hard suction and 2 crosslays with 200 feet of 1 3/4 each. The driver's side pump panel has two 2.5-inch discharges, a 2.5-inch intake, and a gated 5-inch intake with a Storts connection. The passenger side has a 2.5-inch discharge, a 5-inch Storts discharge, and a 5-inch capped intake with no gated adapter that can be used for drafting. The rear of this apparatus has 2 direct tank fills. There's a 2.5-inch intake with a manual ball valve located on the left of the dump chute, and a 5-inch intake with a locking valve to the right of the dump chute. This has a reducer to a 2.5-inch connection that can be removed to be used as a Storts connection. There's a 10-inch extendable dump chute. This is controlled by an electronic valve on the rear of the apparatus. The dump chutes on this tanker are behind the rear wheels as indicated by the blue arrows. The actuators are pneumatic and located just above the rear tailboard indicated by the yellow arrows. The actuators control their respective sides. This concludes this training brief. Thank you for attending this presentation by the Danbury Fire Department Training Division. Special thanks to Lieutenant Artiega for acquiring the photos and information that supported this educational experience.